You're listening to Simply the Best Sports Take, the best podcast breaking down the best stuff in sports with host Sean Bingham. His takes are so good, he dropped the mic, but then you wouldn't be able to hear him, and that would suck.
Welcome into STB Sports Take. I am your host, Sean Bingham, and today we have a fantastic podcast in store for you. We are following up on the all-time great NBA players. We went through the guards, the point guards, and the shooting guards, and today we're talking all the way from small forward through center. And we're bringing back Colin Terry, our NBA expert and NBA scout, as well as Drew Pearson, who's been covering the NBA for 25 years. So we're going to have them back on the show to tell us who they think are the greatest at each of those three positions. And it's going to be fantastic. I'm really excited. So let's dive right in. Again, this was all kind of, I guess inspired, you could say, from the ESPN list of the top 100 that they put out. So we kind of did our own list. We dug deep into stats. We're trying to find stats that could cover everything. We're trying to find some sort of way to calculate, how clutch somebody was even, and things like that. And so we came up with a short list. We're going to start right with the small forwards here. The short list includes, in no particular order, Elgin Baylor, Scottie Pippen, Larry Bird, LeBron James, Dr. J, Kevin Durant, and George Gervin. So that's our short list. That's how many guys is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is 7 guys, and I've got tons of stats here in front of me. I've also seen all of these guys play. I grew up watching guys like Pippen, Bird play, and obviously, we all see Durant now and LeBron now. George Gervin, and Elgin Baylor I've just had to watch film. Dr. J, a little bit of both. I saw him a little bit as a kid and have watched plenty of film on him. So not only do we have the stats, but we've got plenty of experience watching these guys do their thing. So let's just dive right in here and take a look. So there's so many different things that you can look at, to pick who's the greatest ever, right? I mean, so many guys, like we've talked about, will just go off of championships. Well, if we're going off of just championships, obviously Scottie Pippen, has 6, so he's got the most of this group here. But we know that Scottie Pippen played with Michael Jordan, and none of these guys did. So you can't just go off of that. You can't just go off of pure stats either, because I feel like that's just not really quite accurate of a way to determine who the greatest ever is just purely off of the numbers. There's a lot more to it than that. So this was a tough one for me, and this is one that I know a lot of people are going to disagree with. Not a lot, but I know some will disagree with, many of the younger generation especially. But I got to put Larry Bird in this particular moment in time ahead of LeBron James. I know LeBron is the man. I know he's been to the finals, 4 years in a row now? No, 5 years in a row now. And there's a good chance he goes again this year. But he's got 2 championships, and I just haven't seen that killer instinct, that competitive drive in LeBron like I saw it in Larry Bird. So Larry Bird has 3 titles, and he played 13 seasons, got 3 titles, went to the playoffs 12 out of the 13 years he was in the league, went to the finals 4 times, was 3-1 in those finals, got the league MVP 3 times. He did win Rookie of the Year, Finals MVP twice. He and LeBron, if we go down the list, their stats are nearly identical anyway. So LeBron has 2 titles to Larry's 3. LeBron's been to the finals 6 times to Larry's 4. LeBron, league MVP 4 times to Bird's 3. Both Rookie of the Year, both twice Finals MVP. LeBron does have a scoring title. Bird never did get one. Both 9 times on the All-NBA first team, both with 12 All-Star appearances. It's crazy. Their numbers even, LeBron 27.2 to Bird's 24.3. Assists per game, 6.9 for LeBron, 6.3 for Bird. Rebounds per game, 7.1 to Bird's 10. So that's a pretty big advantage for Bird there for rebounding. That's 30% more on average. Steals identical, 1.7 each. Blocks identical, 0.8. Field goal percentage, identical, 49.6 and 49.6. Crazy how close these guys are. 3-point field goal percentage, Bird 37.6 to LeBron's 33.9. Free throw shooting, obviously, Larry Bird higher, 88.6 to LeBron's 74.4. And here's an interesting one that kind of surprised me. Double-doubles. Again, they've both played 13 seasons. LeBron with 307 double-doubles, Bird with 321. Granted, LeBron still has a good amount of this. Well, he's got, 15, 20 games left in this season to play, so maybe he'll catch up there. But triple-doubles, 54 for LeBron, 53 for Bird. It's crazy. It's crazy how close these guys are with their numbers. So it came down to me, to those two guys, and the reason I give Bird the edge right now is because he had that extra title, and I just saw a competitive fire and a killer instinct in him that I haven't quite seen in LeBron. Bird almost had it to the level that Michael Jordan had it, or Kobe Bryant has it. And LeBron just doesn't. And so LeBron is probably, going to retire ahead of Bird on this list, even in my opinion. But as of right now, in this particular moment in time, I'm going to give a slight edge to Larry Bird. I would put LeBron behind him, though. And then after that, it just gets so difficult. You've got Julius Erving, Kevin Durant, George Gervin, Elgin Baylor, and Scottie Pippen. Now, Durant and Gervin and Baylor all have 0 championships, which is really interesting. Dr. J, he got 1 in the NBA and then 3 in the ABA. So you could argue that he would be there at number 3, but I'm actually going to give it to Scottie Pippen. I was on that Bulls bandwagon, as a kid. I loved watching those guys. So I grew up in just outside of D.C. So as a kid, at the time, it was the Washington Bullets. And the Bullets were not really any good, but the Bulls were. And in my brain, as a 5-year-old, Bulls, Bullets, it's like, it's basically the same name. And the Bulls had this guy named Michael Jordan. So as a young kid, I immediately jumped on and just loved, just absolutely loved the Bulls. So I watched Scottie Pippen for years and years, and I'm telling you right now, Scottie Pippen is the greatest defensive small forward that the league has ever seen, by far. LeBron would probably be number 2. In fact, so we look at Scottie's all-defensive first team 8 times. 8. Think about that. 8 times he was dubbed the best defensive small forward in the league. That is a crazy stat that shows how good at defense Scottie Pippen was. He got the steals title in 1995. Those 8 years, by the way, were 8 consecutive years, 92 through 99. He was All-NBA first team, 94 through 96. That's 3 years. So he was a baller. He played 17 seasons, won 6 titles, was 6 for 6 in the finals with Jordan. Went to the playoffs all but 1 year in his career. And let's see, how many All-Star games did he go to? 7. So he was a 7-time All-Star. And for his career, now you got to remember, Pippen, towards the end of his career, he went and he played for the Rockets and the Blazers, and he just wasn't the same Pippen. He kind of became a little bit more of a role player. He was still a phenomenal lockdown defender, but his scoring dipped pretty dramatically. So for his career, his average was 16.1, assists 5.2, rebounds 6.4, steals at 2 even, and he shot the ball well, 47% from the field for his career. So Pippen, though, he makes the list at number 3 for me because he made others around him so much better, and he was a lockdown defender. He was a guy that could guard any position. LeBron's right there, close with him. So those are my top 3. Bird, LeBron, and Pippen. And then after that, it gets kind of hazy. I'd probably put Dr. J after that and go down the list from there. So let's move on to the power forwards now. So pretend you're putting a team together. It's interesting. If you're putting a team together, sorry, I'm actually going to go back to small forwards for a minute. If you're putting a team together, you'd almost want Pippen instead of LeBron or Bird, because Pippen would fit in, he'd fit the role a little bit better maybe. He doesn't need the ball as much. He's a great defender. It's kind of interesting to think about. So, but let's we'll stick with my picks. We'll stick with Bird and then LeBron and then Pippen. But let's go on to the power forwards. And this one's kind of a little bit easier. I don't think many people are going to argue against Tim Duncan being the best ever. But the guys on our shortlist are Barkley, Duncan, Malone, Kevin Garnett, Kevin Mchale, Dirk Nowitzki. So that's kind of our short list. That was the top 6 guys that we looked deeply into. And you got to put Duncan number 1. He's got the 5 titles, 5 of 6 in the finals. And he has a good chance to get another one this year. I mean, the Warriors look incredible, but the Spurs have a chance. The Spurs are right there. I mean, they're on pace for their best record ever in the history of that franchise, and that's a very storied and accomplished franchise. So the Warriors are stealing a lot of the headlines right now, but let's not forget the Spurs. So maybe Duncan gets a sixth. Maybe he ties MJ. He's been league MVP twice. He's just the man. He's the big fundamental, and he can just do it all, and he's so consistent. Like, it's crazy to me to look at Tim Duncan. Here we are. He's been playing in the league for 19 years, and he still can go out there and get a double-double night in and night out. I mean, I feel like he could play 20 minutes and still somehow come out of the game with like 16 and 10. I mean, it's crazy how good he is and how consistent he is. So Duncan, to me, unprecedented stuff, far and away the number one power forward the league has ever seen. Number two, what's interesting is on this short list, the only guys to have championships the only guys to not have championships are Barkley and Malone. Garnett got one. Mckell got 3 with the Celtics. Nowitzki got 1. Mckell, honestly, I'd probably put him dead last on this list. Maybe he's ahead of Dirk. So then it just goes down to now we're all of a sudden looking at KG, Karl Malone, and Charles Barkley. Malone didn't get any. He went to the finals 3 times, twice with the Jazz and then once with that Lakers team. That Lakers team, by the way, do you guys remember that team that lost, that got swept by the Pistons? Or maybe it was in 5 games. I can't remember, but they got embarrassed by the Pistons. And Malone was on that team. It was the year after he left the Jazz. They had Shaq and Kobe and Malone and Glenn Rice and Gary Payton. That was their starting 5. It was like a dream team. But, several of the guys were kind of past their prime. Malone, Glenn Rice, and Payton were all kind of past their prime. But anyway, Malone was kind of just pursuing that title and just wasn't able to get it. But he retired having won the league MVP twice. He was All-NBA First Team 3 times, All-Defensive First Team, All-NBA First Team 11 times, All-Defensive First Team 3 times, and he went to 14 All-Star games, averaged 25 and 10 for his career, shot over 51% from the field for his career, 814 double-doubles, which is the second most on this list, only behind Tim Duncan. So, and then if you scroll down to the all-time rankings, Karl Malone is the number 2 scorer in league history, obviously behind only Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But Malone is also number 6 all-time in rebounding and number 10 all-time in steals. So Karl Malone is in the top 10 for 3 of the major categories in the history of the league. So you can't deny the mailman. Karl Malone, number 2 on our list here. Had he gotten... Say he gets this is what's so interesting. Say he gets those 2 titles. What if he manages to beat Jordan? What if the Jazz managed to beat Jordan? And we talked about this with Bowler Jack, a week or 2 ago. Where does that put guys like Stockton and Malone if they get those 2 titles? Does it bump John Stockton ahead of Magic Johnson? Does it bump Karl Malone ahead of Tim Duncan? Probably not. Probably not, because those are guys we're talking about that each got 5. Magic and Duncan each got 5. So it probably doesn't bump them ahead, but it does change things dramatically for how, the rest of the league and its fans remember them and things like that. So either way, Malone, number 2. Number 3, I'm going to go with another guy that's championship list. I'm going to go with Charles Barkley. That guy could run the floor like he was. I mean, he was doing what Russell Westbrook does nowadays, where he gets the ball and just runs coast to coast like a runaway freight train and just dunks on people. He was the most undersized power forward. He was listed probably at 6'6", or maybe 6'5". He's probably like 6'4", though. But he was defending guys much bigger than him. Barkley was the man. Barkley's career numbers: 23 points a game, 3.9 assists, 12.9 rebounds. Barkley averaged 13 rebounds a game for his career, which was the most of the 8 guys on this, or the 6 guys on this list. And he was the most undersized. Ironically, last on this list, Kevin Mchale at 7.9 boards per game, and then Dirk, which neither one of those surprised me, but those guys are great. Don't get me wrong; those guys are great players. Dirk got a championship, beat LeBron and D Wade. I mean, that was something that shocked the world to see the Mavericks pull off that win over the Miami Heat. That was incredible. So, I would put those guys kind of, like I say, Kevin Mchale, Dirk Nowitzki, towards the end of the list of these 6. And then I'd put Garnett at number 4 behind Barkley. So at our forward positions, I'm going to put Bird as my starter. LeBron's coming off the bench. And then at power forward, I've got Duncan as my starter with Malone coming off the bench. So that's kind of where we're at. So if we go to the total team, going back to last week and into this episode here, this podcast, we've got at the point, Magic with Stockton backing him up. At shooting guard, we've got Jordan with Kobe backing him up. And now at small forward, we have Bird with LeBron backing him up. And then at power forward, Duncan with Malone backing him up. So I'm going to round out a team of a full 15. We're going to get to centers now. Centers is probably the hardest one for me because it's just not a centers league anymore. It's just not a centers league. I mean, it used to be. You look back at the all-time greats, and we're looking at guys like Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Where are those guys today? There aren't any. There really just aren't any. So it really used to be a centers league. And I remember really well in the 90s, it still was kind of that way. You had guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson. Shaq came onto the scene and dominated more into the 2000s. But, I mean, it used to be a centers league, and it's just not at all anymore. But this one's really hazy for me because it's so hard to know, like, how good was Wilt Chamberlain really? How good was the competition really? I know his numbers are crazy good. Wilt, for his career, averaged 30 and 23. 30 points and 23 rebounds per game. Bill Russell averaged 15 points and 22 and a half rebounds per game. I mean, that's insane. Like, guys don't get 20 rebounds anymore. That just doesn't happen. So those guys, they've got to be on the list. And you always hear good things about Bill Russell. The guy won 11 titles. He was like a blocks champion. How many times did he win the blocks title? I don't even know if they kept that stat back then, actually, for blocks. They didn't. They didn't even do blocks titles. It's just we don't have any record of that. What's weird? Wilt Chamberlain got an assists title. Wilt Chamberlain in 1968, this is something most people don't know. In 1968, Wilt Chamberlain did win the assist title. So not only was he scoring 30 points and, pulling down 23 rebounds, but for 1 year, he led the entire NBA in assists. Kind of cool. That was in 1968. For his career, he only averaged 4.4, but still impressive that he got that for 1 year. So the centers, I'm going to skew more towards some of the older guys, to be honest with you. Or excuse me, some of the more recent guys. And it comes down to two guys for me. Robinson and Ewing were studs. But to me, it comes down to Shaq or Hakeem. And I know that's going to surprise a lot of people. The ESPN thing had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar number 2 overall on their list, which I admitted I was fine with, and I still am, because the guy accomplished so much. But when I think about putting together a team, and when I think about the dominance that I witnessed, Hakeem Olajuwon, that guy had moves that no center has ever had before or since him. I mean, he was big and tall and got tons of rebounds and blocked tons of shots, but he was so agile offensively. His moves, the dream shake was so incredible, like nobody had seen it before. The guy played 18 seasons. He went to the finals 3 times, won 2 of them. Was in the playoffs 15 times. Won the league MVP once. Defensive Player of the Year twice. Finals MVP twice, both of the titles. All-NBA first team 6 times. 5 times was on the All-NBA first defensive team. 2 rebounding titles, which actually was third most on this list. So Wilt Chamberlain got 11. Bill Russell got 4. Hakeem got 2. Ewing got 0. That surprised me. Shaq got 0. That surprised me. David Robinson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar each got 1 rebounding title. So that kind of surprised me. I guess there's power forwards. I know in the 90s and even, especially in the 90s, I guess, Rodman was getting all the rebounding titles. And then for blocks, Hakeem Olajuwon got 3 blocks titles, which was second most on this list behind Kareem. Kareem had 4. But I got to be honest, I think I would put Kareem as my 3rd best center of all time. I would put Kareem 3rd. I would put I can't even decide right now. I would probably take Shaq. I think Shaq changed the game. New rules were put into place for the entire NBA because of Shaquille O'Neal. The guy for his career averaged 23.7 points per game and 10.9 boards. He shot 58.2% from the field, which was most among anyone on this list. The problem with Shaq was he couldn't shoot free throws, 52.7% from the line, whereas Hakeem Olajuwon was 71% from the line. It's tough. Hakeem was also over 50%. All these guys were actually over 50% from the field, except Bill Russell. Bill Russell was 44% from the field. Shaq led the way at 58.2. Kareem was second at 55.9, so really 56. Wilt 54, and then Robinson 51.8, Hakeem 51, and Ewing 50.4. So all of them shot well from the field, but Shaq led the way with 50. I mean, he made almost 60% of the shots he took for his entire career. And he was so much bigger and so much better than everyone else, and so athletic. You know, Shaq just was a truly dominant force. He had of this list, Shaq had the second most double doubles, which shows consistency. He played 19 seasons. Kareem 20, Ewing 17, Hakeem Olajuwon 18. All of these guys played a bunch. The lowest was Bill Russell. He played 13 seasons. How about Bill Russell? He played 13 seasons. He went to the finals 11 times, and he won all 11. That's crazy. Every year of his career, he was in the playoffs, and every year but 2 of them, he was in the finals, and he won it every single time. That is a storybook career. That's crazy. Bill Russell with 5 league MVPs, second only to Kareem's 6. Wilt Chamberlain with 4, being third on this list. Hakeem got 1, and Shaq got 1. And Robinson got 1. Patrick Ewing never did get 1. But Ewing had a great career nonetheless, was Rookie of the Year in 1986, and was All-NBA first defense just one time, which kind of surprised me. I kind of started thinking, who were some of the guys that were better than him, getting on that first team? And honestly, it was guys like Hakeem Olajuwon and David Robinson. Hakeem was on there 6 times, Robinson 4. So Ewing would probably, it's Ewing and Robinson at the end, and then the other 5 ahead of them. And I would order it like this. I would say Shaq number 1, Hakeem Olajuwon number 2, Kareem number 3, Wilt number 4, Russell number 5, and then it's tough. I'd probably say Robinson number 6, and Ewing number 7. That would be my list. And even at the beginning, it's so hard. Those first 3 are almost interchangeable. Shaq, Kareem, and Hakeem. You can't really go wrong with any of those guys. And Kareem's going to dominate the numbers. He's the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. Hakeem Olajuwon, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago when we first started talking about this whole ESPN list. But Hakeem is a guy, so he averaged 25.9 points per game in the playoffs, which was most of anybody on this list. Second was actually a tie between Shaq and Kareem, both of them averaging 24.3. But Hakeem Olajuwon, what I wanted to mention about him is that for his career, he averaged 21.7. In the playoffs, he went up 4 points per game and averaged 25.9. Everyone else actually dipped a little bit. Robinson dipped by about 2 points per game in the playoffs. Ewing dipped by 2 points per game in the playoffs. Wilt Chamberlain dipped by 8 points per game in the playoffs. Kareem dipped by just 0.3. Shaq went up by 0.6. Russell went up by 1.1. So of all these guys, they all either stayed really, really close to where they were or they dipped, except Hakeem. He went up by 4 points per game. So he really elevated his game quite a bit in the playoffs. His assists went up. His rebounds came down by 1 rebound per game. But his blocks, three blocks per game for his career, both in the playoffs and in the regular season, which was most among anybody on this list. Only 1 triple-double, but a lot of these guys didn't get triple-doubles. Shaq got 2. Hakeem got 1. Ewing got 1. Robinson got 14. David Robinson had 14 career triple-doubles. That's pretty cool. But anyway, going back to Shaq, he changed the game. He was so dominant and so physical, and if he could have shot free throws a little bit better, it would be an easy decision for Shaq number 1. But because he couldn't shoot free throws at all, It makes it trickier for me, and it makes me think about guys like Kareem and Hakeem Olajuwon. But even though, Kareem got the 6 MVPs, which is the most ever, he got 2 finals MVPs and he won 6 titles. I mean, Kareem got all the numbers. It's tough to argue against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but I'm still going to say that in their primes, Shaq was the better, more dominant player. Shaq, I mean, we forget, Shaq got 4 titles, 3 of which he was the man for. I know Kobe Bryant got 5 and everybody, thinks Kobe's so great, which he is, but Shaq was definitely the man on those first 3 championship runs with those Lakers teams. And he was the finals MVP for all 3 of those finals. So really, Shaq got 3 in LA, and then he went and got another one with the Heat where he was number 2 to Dwayne Wade. But he was in the finals 6 times and league MVP just once, but he also won Rookie of the Year. All these guys won Rookie of the Year except Russell and Hakeem Olajuwon. So that was kind of interesting. Of these 7 guys, 5 of them won Rookie of the Year, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, so Shaq, 2 scoring titles, which was second only to Wilt's 7, which also made me wonder, because Kareem, he's the all-time leading scorer in league history, but he only won 2 scoring titles himself. So, when you compare, and it's important to compare apples to apples. So it's like, if we're thinking, okay, you can't just look at the all-time numbers because Kareem's going to dominate. He played 20 seasons and he was consistent for that whole time. So it's interesting to me to look at like, okay, how many years was he the best in the league for that year? So that's why I look at like how many scoring titles did he get? How many rebounding titles did he get? How many times was he on the first team All-NBA? How many times was he league MVP or first team All-Defense? Things like that. And, Kareem has a lot of those numbers too. He was 5 times on the All-Defensive team, which is the tops on this list, tied with Hakeem Olajuwon. 10 times All-NBA first team, tops on this list. Second would be Shaq with 8. Rebounding title, 11 for Wilt, and then none for Shaq, and only 1 for Kareem. We talked about that. Blocks titles, Kareem with 4. I'm starting to make a case for Kareem here, aren't I? I'm sticking to my guns, though. I'm saying Shaq number 1. Shaq number 1. Kareem was 6 times the All-Star MVP, too. Holy cow. For his career, Kareem 24.6 points, 11.2 rebounds. Am I going to change my mind right here on the spot? It's hard to not give it to Kareem. They don't have stats for double-doubles and stuff even back then. It wouldn't be hard to go look, but number 1 all-time in points, number 4 all-time in rebounds. And then after that, he's number 3 all-time in blocks. Hakeem Olajuwon, though, number 1 all-time in blocked shots, number 10 all-time in points, number 13 all-time in rebounds. Shaq is number 7 all-time in points, number 14 all-time in rebounds, number 8 all-time in blocks. So they're all right there. It's tough, man. It's tough. Those 3 are interchangeable. Honestly, Shaq, Kareem, and Hakeem Olajuwon are interchangeable. So let's bring in an expert. Let's clarify this up. I think I'm going to take all 3 of those guys. If I get a team of 15, we've only named 8. So that gets us now to 11 with these 3. I'm going to field a full team, right? So I'm for sure I'm not gonna restrict myself to positions though for the final 5. So I'm for sure gonna take all 3 of those guys, Shaq, Kareem, and Hakeem Olajuwon, probably still in that order. Or excuse me, it'd be Shaq, Hakeem, and then Kareem. But they're interchangeable. You know what? They're all there. They're all on my team with Jordan and Magic and Stockton and Kobe and LeBron and Bird and Duncan and Malone. So I've got 11. I'm gonna do 4 more. But first, we're gonna bring in our NBA expert and talk more about this with him. Okay, and with that, we welcome back our NBA expert, Colin Terry. Again, Colin has done both scouting and development of professional players. Colin, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Sean, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you back.
Sounds good. Excited to be back.
Dude, we had such good feedback from your controversial Jimmer comments, and of course your great analysis of the all-time best guards in NBA history that we gotta get your take on the forwards and the centers. So you ready for that?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, dude, let's do it. So let's just hop right into small forwards. I know you said earlier that you would have something controversial here, so let's hear it.
Yeah, so ESPN ranks LeBron James as the best small forward to ever play basketball. I actually would put Larry Bird over him.
Really?
For basically two reasons. So, I think Larry Bird so far right now has an advantage over LeBron James.
All right, I like it. Let's hear it.
Okay, so the first reason is that I think Larry Bird has more of a clutch gene than LeBron. He hit some big time clutch shooting shots in the playoffs and the finals. The guy was just absolutely fearless. Would go up against anybody. I mean, anybody that's going to talk trash to Michael Jordan, you kind of have to respect it quite a bit.
Was that in real life or just in those McDonald's commercials?
No, in the playoffs. I think it was the '85 playoffs when Michael Jordan went off. Larry Bird was talking trash, and he was definitely holding his own. So
absolutely,
that's my number one choice.
The Celtics won that game. People forget that, but the Celtics actually won that game and swept the series.
Yeah, and so Larry Bird. I love guys in the league, especially who are fearless, who are mentally tough, who, won't back down from anybody, and Larry Bird would do that. And whereas LeBron, I love LeBron's game, but if you watch him, and I've scouted him a few times, if his jump shot's not falling, he has a tendency to lose his confidence a little bit, and you'll see it because then he'll just start driving to the basket like crazy, whether there's a path open or not, to try and get fouled or to try and finish and things like that. And, I think that's, one of the issues that he's kind of had throughout his career is consistently hitting that jump shot, whether it's mid-range or three-pointer.
Interesting. So are you putting LeBron 2, or is he even further down the list?
I would put LeBron number 2. I would put Larry Bird over him now, just like I said, the clutch, the extra championships. Larry won 3 championships. But I would put LeBron number 2 there.
Where does a guy like Scottie Pippen fall on the list? Does he make your short list at all, or is he too much riding the coattails of Jordan? I personally think Scottie was the man, but I grew up a Bulls fan, so.
Yeah. So I think Scottie Pippen was one of the best defenders to play the game. I would definitely put him on the list. I don't think, Michael Jordan didn't go to the finals without Scottie Pippen. He didn't win a championship without Scottie Pippen. I think Scottie Pippen would have been a fantastic player on another team in the NBA and done very, very well. And so I'm going to have to agree with you, Sean, that I definitely think Scottie Pippen should be on that list.
Okay, I like that. And a more current guy, Kevin Durant, I know he hasn't won any titles yet. He does have the 1 MVP. He's got 4 scoring titles, been to the playoffs 5 times, went to the finals once. But what's his, he's 9 years into his career. What's his potential?
No, Kevin Durant is a great, great player. I think one of the toughest things that Kevin's had to deal with is that, when he's gotten close to, going to the finals or being in the finals, things like that, it takes a little bit of luck. It takes a little bit of timing. It takes a little bit of things to go your way. And, he's kind of been unlucky in that a little bit. His timing's been a little off.
Yeah.
I think he's also had to learn, most great players in the NBA have been on a learning curve of how to get over the hump and win that title and get to the next round and things like that. So I think part of it is too, he's been on that hump. But, I think the biggest mistake they made was getting rid of James Harden. I think they were right there. They had a great shot, and that was a big loss for them and his chances in OKC of winning a title.
Yeah. So, okay, now let's move on to power forwards then. Rate these guys. Before I let you just say who your top 2 are, I want you to rate these 3. Kevin Garnett, Kevin Mckell, Dirk Nowitzki. And I'm assuming none of those 3 make your top 2, and that's why I chose them. I just want to see kind of where you gauge those guys as far as all time. And I know that two of them are still playing, but they're definitely at the tail ends of their career.
Yeah. Kevin Mckell, Kevin Garnett, and Dirk Nowitzki. I would put Kevin Garnett as number one with that list.
Okay.
Tremendous teammate, tremendous work ethic. I've heard some amazing stories about him and his work ethic in the NBA and as a teammate and stuff. Just incredibly impressed by him.
Mm-hmm.
I rate him number one because when he was in his prime, he could pretty much do it all. And he was tough. So I'd put him number one. Number two, I'd put Kevin Mckell. I remember watching him some in the 80s. He was incredible. I mean, he could, he was had a million moves in the post, could really shoot, mid-range jumper, that pick and pop, set,
mm-hmm.
and do that. And then I would put Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk is a great shooter, but I think defense, I don't know about his leadership abilities compared to the two other guys. I don't think it's at that level.
Yeah.
But great player nonetheless.
Yeah. So I made my own little short list of power forwards, and those three were rated. You actually rated them exactly like I did. I put them as my 4, 5, and 6. And ironically, on this short list of 6 guys, the other 3 I'll just tell you now: Duncan, Malone, and Barkley. Of those 6, the only guy to win Defensive Player of the Year is Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, he is such, one of the things that I've heard guys that have coached him in the NBA say that he is just, a big thing on defense is communicating. And big guys in the NBA, they're like the quarterbacks of the defense because they can see everything that's going on. The guy guarding the ball doesn't really know what's going on, doesn't know when the screen's coming up on him and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't surprise me because all these guys in the NBA just say that he is such a great communicator and great quarterback of the defense. So for him to win the Defensive Player of the Year, I'm surprised it hasn't been, multiple times.
Yeah. He was 9 times on the first all defensive team, and his Defensive Player of the Year came the same year that the Celtics won the title in 2008. So, okay. So with that, who's your top guys? You've heard, everybody knows who mine are. I'm going Duncan, Malone, Barkley in that order. But what give me your opinion.
I take Tim Duncan as the best power forward ever. Again, for all of the, all the little things, master of the little things, complete, great teammate. He's phenomenal on both. He's been phenomenal on both ends of the floor. The guy's just ageless. I mean, it's amazing the stats he puts up, and for how long he's been in the league.
Seriously, the guy could play 10 minutes and he'd still come out somehow with 10 rebounds.
Yeah, and it's just earlier in his career, great athlete, pretty good athlete. Now not a great athlete, but just so smart, knows how to play and read the defense and all the angles of the game. Karl Malone, phenomenal. The only bugaboo about Karl is just, maybe the clutch gene a little bit, especially at the foul line, but incredible player, great work ethic. I'd have to agree with you there, and then, like you said, Kevin Garnett, we both agree on that one as well.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the time. We've got about 3 minutes left here, but we got to get to centers because I think that's where the most controversy happens. So you just launch into it. The game used to be a big man's game. It's definitely not anymore. And there's so many greats. ESPN's list, their top 10 had 6 big men, 5 of them true centers. The other guy was Tim Duncan, who's power forward, but he also plays the 5 sometimes. So clearly the big men used to rule the game. They don't anymore, but who are the top big men of all time for you?
I would put number 1, Kareem. I think he's, again, that's who ESPN put, but I mean, the guy's statistics are just unbelievable. The winning, he's got 6 MVPs.
Mm-hmm.
6 MVPs.
I know.
That's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Career
Crazy.
stats: 24 points, averaged 23 points when he was 38. So
Wow.
I put him at number 1. Number 2, I would put Hakeem Olajuwon. Absolutely amazing player, post player. I would put him at number 2. Again, I wasn't around to watch Wilt Chamberlain or Bill Russell. I'm sure they were fantastic, but I also think at that time of the game that they were probably quite a bit taller than, the most of the players in the league and stuff like that. Not to take anything away from them, but it was a different ball game then. The next player I would put on the list is probably Moses Malone. I've seen a little bit of film of him. He was an incredibly dominant player. I do think Shaq is overrated, being at number.
Really?
I do, yeah. Shaq at number 4 is being overrated for that. I love Shaq. I think he's great, but the reason why I wouldn't put him so high is he had a very low skill level. I mean, the reason why he was as dominant as he was just bigger, stronger, and it wasn't because he had a sky hook or 3 different post moves in one play like Hakeem Olajuwon. So
yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, the guy dominated like nobody's dominated before. I mean, I would put Shaq. I go back and forth between Shaq and Hakeem because Hakeem, you're right. Hakeem could do it all. Hakeem had moves like no big man's ever had. Hakeem actually could shoot free throws, unlike Wilt, Russell, and Shaq. But Shaq changed the game. I mean, Shaq was a guy that came in and is ripping hoops down, and there's the hack-a-Shaq thing. There's like the NBA rules changed as a result of Shaquille O'Neal, and he got 4 titles. Yeah. I mean, it's tough to argue with Shaq. He got 1 MVP. Hakeem also got 1. But man, I mean, that's interesting. That's interesting to hear that you think Shaq would be where are you putting him? Like 5, 6, 7 down the list?
Yeah, I'd probably put him before David Robinson. So, that shuffles the list. So I'd probably put him at 6 or 7. I would, just because, the other thing is, when I look at greatness, like we talked about, before, is, is Shaq a great teammate? Is Shaq a guy that's in shape, and that's committed to both ends of the floor? And I think during parts of his career, it seems to say that he wasn't committed. He wasn't in shape. I mean, could you imagine how good Shaq would have been? I don't think there would be any debate if Shaq was always in shape, had, a decent skill level.
Yeah.
From the free throw line, all that other stuff. I mean, could you imagine how much better he would be? But, I think Shaq was phenomenal, but I think he was, I don't know if basketball was always the number one priority.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at this list. So my short list contains a lot of the same guys that you said. Kareem, Wilt, Russell, Hakeem, David Robinson, Shaq, and then I've got Patrick Ewing on my short list as well. Ewing and Shaq are the only 2 to never make the All-NBA first defensive team. So that's kind of an interesting stat about Shaq. Maybe how many blocks and rebounds did he average for his career? So Shaq, 10.9 rebounds, 2.3 blocks for his career. That's pretty good. Hakeem,
when you're the biggest guy on the floor,
you
should be getting, 15, 16, 17 rebounds a game, right? I mean,
that's what Wilt was doing. Wilt and Russell, 22.9 and 22.5 for their careers.
Yeah, and I just got done scouting the Detroit Pistons, and Andre Drummond. I mean, Andre Drummond is, he's a rebounding machine. I mean, there's been games this year where he's had over 20 rebounds. And so, I think if Shaq's commitment level was there, and I think that's part of the problem with Kobe, but if his commitment level was there, to play hard and play every game, which is a challenge because it's kind of a grind. I think it'd be a no-brainer, but
yeah.
for me, it's hard for me to put him there when he, I just don't wonder about the commitment level all the time.
Interesting. You're starting to change my mind. I had Shaq at number 1. Maybe I'll bump him down a little bit,
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is, and then the other thing is, what was Shaq's offensive skill besides dunking, and then maybe, a jump hook from the right hand jump hook? Was he consistently hitting left hand jump hooks? Was he?
No, but I guess the argument is that he didn't need to. He had the ability to score without needing a sky hook or a dream shake, But I do see your point, but I guess my argument back would be he didn't need to do that stuff because he could just overpower people and dunk it,
Yeah.
But okay, so we are out of time. But your starting 5 then. Let's see if I can remember all of them. You've got Kareem at the 5, Duncan at the 4. I'm going in reverse order here. Bird at the 3, Jordan at the 2, Magic at the 1.
Yep, that's my starting 5.
That's a pretty good starting 5. Well, it would be fun if we could get all these guys back and clone some of them, because I think a lot of them make multiple lists. But it'd be interesting to see, kind of how these guys would match up. I'd love to see, I know we saw Shaq and Hakeem a little bit against each other, but I'd love to see those two both like in the thick of their primes at like their athletic peaks go against each other. That could be a really interesting matchup. Or even Wilt. Maybe Wilt and Shaq would be a better one.
Yeah.
But
both guys they're just bigger and stronger than everybody, so they probably cancel each other out to a certain extent because they both, didn't have a real high skill level.
And can't shoot free throws, yeah.
Yeah, can't shoot free throws. So, anyways.
All right, well, Colin, again, thanks for joining us. This is a debate that, we've been having a lot of fun with, and I think we could go on forever, but that's all the time we have for today. So thanks again for joining us.
Hey, no problem.
Again, that's Colin Terry, our NBA expert. Interesting that he agreed with me on Bird. Maybe it's a generational thing. He's just a few years older than I am, but Larry Bird getting the nod over LeBron James yet again. So let's get straight over to our next guest, though, Drew Pearson. Again, Drew's a good friend of mine. He's been covering the NBA for 25 years. Drew, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
We're running out of time here, but I want to talk to you real quick about centers. This is a tough one. I won't even say any names. I just want to hear your opinion. Who are some of the top centers of all time?
Yeah, well, it's tough because we've only seen a couple of them played in our lifetime that you could put on the list. You've got Shaq.
Didn't Shaq used to call himself the LCL, the last center left, or something like that?
Last great center or something like that. But Shaq, Ewing, Olajuwon, and
David Robinson.
Robinson, that was the other one that was skipping me off the top of my head. Those are the only great ones we've seen in our lifetimes. We saw a little bit of Kareem, but that was at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got to put Kareem and Wilt and
Bill Russell. Yeah.
All those three, just from all the stories and everything else. And I've seen a few highlights, but the way they dominated the game, they're the ones who built all these people that used to say, they're the ones who got Greg Oden drafted first in the NBA draft, is because it's like, if you can get a great big guy, you're just going to win. And that's not the way the league is played anymore. But
no, it's really not.
You almost have to put those three at the top just because of, they dominated the game. Nobody could stop them. You couldn't win without one of them.
How would a guy like Wilt, and I'm with you, I've only seen highlights of Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem for the most part as well, only just highlights, but how would those guys fare against a guy like Shaq in his prime? Because Shaq is like 300-something pounds, 7'1". I mean, it feels like those guys wouldn't have a chance, but Wilt and Bill Russell, they were pretty big guys themselves, but how are they going to fare against a guy like Shaquille O'Neal or against an Hakeem Olajuwon?
Yeah, I honestly think we talked about with this when we talked about the guards, and I feel like today's guards are significantly, more athletic and better. But the big guys, I mean, I would think that they would fare great. I mean, Shaq is maybe the exception, but you look at Olajuwon and Ewing and Robinson. I can't imagine that Kareem and Wilt and Russell wouldn't handle their own against those guys just fine.
That's a really good point. So you're kind of playing into what I think. If I'm taking a center of all time, I'm taking Shaq. And you kind of said he's the exception. Are you taking Shaq or are you taking Kareem? Kareem's got the accolades. Kareem has 6 titles to Shaq's 4. Kareem has 6 league MVPs, which is the most all time. Shaq only got 1, which is really weird to me. I feel like that's a travesty. He should have gotten more than that. But
yeah.
do you take Kareem over a Shaq, or do you take Shaq over Kareem? Or if you're taking one guy, who is it?
Well, Shaq's definitely the most entertaining, but I would probably take Kareem.
Kareem. You know what's crazy? Kareem. Yeah. I mean, I've got this list here in front of me. Kareem, 6 league MVPs, Rookie of the Year, Finals MVP only twice, which is interesting because he won 6 and went to 9. He went to 9 finals. 9.
Jeez.
But only won the MVP twice. Only led the league in scoring twice, but he was All-NBA First Team 5 times, All-NBA First Defensive Team 5 times, and Shaq never made the All-Defensive Team, at least not the first All-NBA Defense Team. Kind of interesting. Shaq never won a rebounding title. Kareem did. He got 1 in 1976. Kareem got 4 blocks titles. 4 times led the league in blocks. Shaq never did. So, yeah, you might be onto something there. Kareem averaged more points per game for his career, more rebounds per game. Shot far better from the line than Shaq.
Yeah, Shaq. Shaq. That'll be his legacy, in my opinion, is tainted by the fact that he couldn't learn to shoot free throws.
Yeah,
shoot them underhand if you have to. You've got to learn. This is your profession. You're one of the top. You've got more talent than anybody who's ever played in the NBA as far as size, athleticism, everything. And you bailed everybody out by not learning how to shoot free throws. That guy, he's got to be shot more free throws than almost anybody that's ever played in the league, I would assume.
Yeah, I don't have the stat like that in front of me, but I do have their percentages. So Kareem was 72% from the line for his career. Shaq, 52.7. Bill Russell, 56.1. Wilt Chamberlain, though, among this short list of the 7 we've been talking about, Wilt Chamberlain is the worst free throw shooter at 51.1. And then Olajuwon, Ewing, and Robinson were all 70% plus. So they were up there with Kareem as good free throw shooters. So it's interesting, the 2 most physically dominant ones for their time and possibly ever are Wilt Chamberlain and Shaquille O'Neal, but they were also the 2 that couldn't hit from the line.
Yeah, made it a little easier to compete with them.
Yeah. Well, it's a debate that could go on forever and ever and ever, but Drew, we really appreciate your time, and if you can ever get this dream team of yours together, of what did we end up with? We ended up with Kareem at center, and then Jordan and Stockton and Duncan and Bird, right?
That's right.
That's a pretty good team.
I'll throw them out there and see what happens.
I think for mine, if I could somehow clone a couple of those guys, I would take Jordan. I would take Bird. I'm going to take Shaq, though. I'll take my chances with Shaq. And then I'm going to have to take Duncan as well. And then I would take Magic over Stockton. So we'd have 2 differences is all, but it'd be a good matchup.
It would.
All right, man. Hey, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Drew Pearson, everyone. We want to thank him again for joining us. So we had quite a few similarities there. Colin obviously disagreed with me on the Shaq thing, and Drew kind of did as well, but I'm sticking to my guns. I'm saying Shaq's the most dominant center ever. And, I've got 4 more spots. We're running out of time, so I'm just going to fill these last 4 spots before the end of the show here. And it's tough. I think I'm going to take Bill Russell, and I think I'm going to take Dwayne Wade. I love D. Wade. I think he's a stud, and he had a I don't know, 7 or 8 year stretch there that was just like absolutely incredible. So I'm going to take D-Wade. I'm going to take Bill Russell. I'm going to take Charles Barkley. I think I'll take Sir Charles. And I get one more guy. Man, it's tough. There's Pippen. There's Oscar Robertson. You know what? I'm going to take Steph Curry. I'm going to take Steph Curry. I've got him rated as my eighth best point guard of all time. His career is just too young. But, he's doing crazy things this year. He's super fun to watch. And he can be my 15th man on the end of the bench. So Steph Curry is my 15th guy. So that rounds out my team, and that rounds out our podcast for today. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast, whether you're listening on SoundCloud or iTunes or wherever. Please subscribe. If you're on iTunes, please give us a good rating. We love it. Check me out on Twitter, @Sean Bingham, SeanBingham. Peace.
Thanks for hanging with Simply the Best Sports Take. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out stbsportstake.com. Simply the best in sports.
'Cause we